All right, good evening to everyone. If you have just entered into the Zoom tonight, we do ask that you go to the chat and fill out the sign-in sheet for us. We will begin. Hello, my name is Arthur Kelly, and I am the program specialist at Grassfield High School. I am joined by my colleague, which he will introduce himself.
Hey guys, thank you all for joining us tonight. My name is Apollos Hall, and I'm the Access College Advisor for Oscar Smith High School.
And welcome to Virtual Access College Financial Aid Night. Tonight, we will provide a brief overview of the financial aid process. At the end of the presentation, each Access Advisor's contact information will be available should you have any questions or would like to set up an appointment to file your FAFSA form. If you do have general questions tonight, we will answer questions live at the end of the presentation. To submit a question, use the chat icon at the bottom of the screen. We will do our best to answer as many questions as possible. Again, we ask that you keep to general questions for this purpose and more specific and personal questions to your individual Access Advisor, but we will do our best. All right, before we dive into financial aid, here is a little bit about the Access College Foundation. Access has been helping students go to college since 1988 and currently serves students and families in 31 high schools across Southampton Roads, Western Tidewater, and Northampton County. Since Access was founded, we have helped over 75,000 students and have helped them to leverage over $750 million in financial aid. Access has also awarded over $13 million in last dollar scholarships to students. The FAFSA is the free application for federal student aid and is a federal form for prospective and current college students to determine their eligibility for student financial aid from colleges and universities. The FAFSA opens up on October 1st, which is tomorrow, for families to file for the 2022-2023 school year. Let's get into the types of aid that are offered and who is eligible. There are different types of aid, and let's start with grants. Grants are free money that you don't have to pay back. Students can receive grants from the federal government, the state, or the college, or the university they attend. The only way to be eligible to receive a grant of any kind is by filing your FAFSA form. Scholarships are another type of aid you do not have to pay back. Scholarships can come from many places, including colleges and universities, community organizations, parents' work, banks, and many other places. The biggest key with scholarships is apply, apply, and again, I say apply. Loans are a type of aid that you must pay back. When you file the FAFSA form, students can become eligible for a federal student loan. The loan is often broken up into two parts, a subsidized loan and an unsubsidized loan. The subsidized portion of the loan, the federal government pays the interest on that loan while you are in school. The unsubsidized portion of the loan, interest is accruing on the loan while the student is in school. The biggest key with student loans is to only borrow what you need. Filing the FAFSA form does not automatically give you a student loan. It is still something that you would have to sign for. The last type of aid is work study. Work study is aid that is offered from the college to the student. where the student would work a small job somewhere on campus and in turn would receive money like a job, or they can apply the money towards their bill. Study jobs are usually only 10 to 15 hours a week. If you are offered a work study type of aid, it is on a first come, first served basis. So, who then is eligible to receive financial aid? The criteria that the Department of Education uses is that a student must be a citizen or eligible non-citizen, enrolled in a degree or certificate program, at least on a half-time basis. And the student cannot be in default of a federal loan. Eligible non-US citizens are eligible for financial aid if they meet any of these criteria. The most common being a US permanent resident with a permanent resident card. How do I apply for financial aid? The first step is going to be to set up a FSA ID for both the student and at least one of the parents. To set up an FSA ID, some basic information will be needed: email address, social security numbers, birthdays, full legal name, and addresses are needed to set up the FSA ID. Once you have input your information, you must select and answer 4 security questions that come from a pre-populated list. Security questions are used to unlock an account if a student or parent forget the username and password. Once you have input your information and selected your security questions, you must verify the account using an email or a texting code. If you list an email or a cell phone number, you must verify both the email and the texting code before the FSA ID will be valid. Access recommends that both the student and parent validate both forms when available to do so. Once submitted, your FSA ID will be verified by the Social Security Administration, typically within 1 to 3 days. So, how do we file a FAFSA? To file the FAFSA, parents will need the basic information they use to set up the FSA ID, and they will be using their 2020 taxes. Again, I repeat, their 2020 taxes. Parents will need the 2020 tax return, 2020 W-2s, as well as a bank account estimate and assets estimates to fill out the FAFSA form. When applying for FAFSA, you will want to make sure that you are on a .gov website, that is .gov website. There are fraudulent websites out there willing to take advantage of students and families. Students will need the exact same information, especially if they worked in 2020 and filed a tax return. Students will also need to know what colleges they want to send the FAFSA form to. On the FAFSA form, you can list up to 10 colleges. You can list a college on the form, even if you have not applied yet. I will now turn over the remainder of the presentation to Mr. Hall, and I will return during the live presentation.
Thank you so much for that, Mr. Kelly. Again, I'm Mr. Hall from Oscar Smith, and I'm gonna go ahead and finish up the presentation for you. So there are a couple of important dates with the FAFSA. The FAFSA opens tomorrow, October 1st, so it will be soon open for families to file. Access advisors are ready to help you file, so make sure you reach out to them to get an appointment to file the FAFSA. The second important dates are the priority deadlines. Most colleges have a priority filing deadline, and students who file their FAFSA by that deadline get priority financial aid awards, which include the most federal gift aid and most state financial aid. Because financial aid is awarded on a first come, first served basis, it is critical that you meet priority deadlines because colleges exhaust the amount of federal and state gift aid early. So students who file after priority deadlines get the money that's left. So make sure you keep that in mind. In Virginia, some priority deadlines are as early as November the 1st. So what happens once you sign and submit your FAFSA? Once you file the FAFSA, it goes to the Department of Education to get processed. The student will then receive a student aid report, which is a line-by-line summary of the FAFSA. And the other item that is generated is called an EFC, or an expected family contribution. The EFC is a number that the Department of Education says your family can pay for 1 year of college based off of the tax information and other factors from your FAFSA. Once the Department of Education has processed the FAFSA form, it gets sent to all the colleges you have listed on the FAFSA. The EFC is used by colleges to determine the amount of financial need that you have for the college and the corresponding financial aid for which you qualify for. Once the college has received and processed your FAFSA form, they will generate you a financial aid award letter that will give you a breakdown of the aid you have qualified for and a breakdown of all costs for the year, usually broken down by semester. If you have not received your award letter from the college, make sure you work with your access advisor to obtain that. And once you have the award letter, submit a copy to your advisor and work with them to fully understand your award package. Award letters are typically available in the early spring. So let's go over some of the key factors that make up those award letters we just mentioned. Cost of attendance is made up of tuition and fees, room and board, books, travel costs, loan fees, and personal expenses. So basically, it is everything that goes into the sticker price for that school. The EFC, or expected family contribution, is determined based upon your family size, your income, and other information reported on your FAFSA form. It is used by colleges and scholarship organizations to determine need. So once the EFC is subtracted out from the cost of attendance, if the need exceeds zero, then you qualify for need-based aid. It is important to know, however, that while the cost of the schools you apply to may be different, your EFC will be the same at each school. So in the example on the slide, this student has applied to 3 different schools with different costs of attendance. Subtracting out the EFC, which remains the same, it leaves the student with different levels of need for each school. You will be surprised how many errors are made on FAFSAs each year. And because an error can delay an award for up to 6 weeks, it is vital to avoid these errors. Some of the most common ones are using the wrong social security number and not using your full legal name. Now, that is a lot of information and a lot of steps and precise things that are needed. Your best resource is going to be your access advisor. Advisors receive training on updates to the FAFSA each year and are very knowledgeable about the FAFSA and can help you avoid errors. Setting up an appointment with your access advisor to file the FAFSA will not only help you know that you have done it correctly, but it also gives advisors a chance to talk to you about next steps, such as scholarships you might be eligible for, verification letters, or next steps for a specific college that you are applying to. So please, please, please make sure you use your access advisor. So let's talk about scholarships a little bit. Scholarships are a big part of senior year and can really cut down on the cost of attendance that we talked about earlier. Scholarships are free money that you do not have to pay back. Apply for as many as you are eligible for. Scholarships can be just for about any criteria, from college major, parents in the military, or other specific lines of work, GPA or essay contests. Scholarships can be need-based as well. Working with your access advisor is a great way to be in the know about scholarship information, as well as when and where to apply. Each year, Access awards scholarships to students that attend the high schools that we serve. Applications come out in March and are due in May. Advisors will provide information to the students as the spring comes around on all of their platforms, and information will be available on our website. Lastly, we want to give out the advisor's contact information for each high school that we serve. We understand that every family situation is unique and different. So please reach out to your advisor with any questions, and more importantly, to schedule an appointment to file the FAFSA form. We will leave this contact page up for the next 10 minutes so everyone has a chance to get the information. So please get it. If you have not yet filled out our sign-in sheet, please make sure you go to the chat. The link is copied in there. Please fill that out for us before you leave. Okay, now at this time, Mr. Kelly and myself will answer any general questions that have been or are being submitted through the chat.
All right, guys, good evening. My name is Mr. Williams, Kyle Williams. I'm the Access Advisor at Hickory High School. I'll be moderating the chat and try and give Mr. Kelly and Mr. Hall all the great questions that you guys put into that chat feature. First question, here it comes. All right, Mr. Kelly. You just talked about the FAFSA form. Could you also explain a little bit about what the CSS profile is?
Okay. The CSS profile is another indicator, and thank you for the question, another indicator that some colleges use to verify income, household size, and assets. The FAFSA only asks for the custodial parents' information. So in case of a split in the family, the student would only have to provide the custodial parents' information on the FAFSA form. However, some schools also use the CSS profile, and that information will be indicated on their website if they do take it. Schools like UVA, they do need the CSS profile. The CSS profile is asked for a lot more information than the FAFSA form. So I do encourage you to get that in and submit it by the deadline that is needed for that college. But information that you would be putting on that form is also the non-custodial parents' information, and then it goes in more in depth about assets and investments. Very good.
Thank you, Yep, thank you, Mr. Kelly. Again, Access Advisors can help you fill out the CSS profile as well if you need help with that. And that CSS profile can be found on the College Board website.
Yep.
Mr. Hall, do you need to renew your FAFSA every year?
Absolutely, absolutely. So just keep in mind, as long as y'all are in college, you will have to renew your FAFSA each and every year. So always keep October 1st in mind, right? Because every October 1st, when you are a freshman in college, sophomore, junior, senior, if you decide to go to grad school, you will have to renew your FAFSA each year. Yes.
Awesome. I'm going to throw this next one to you as well, Mr. Hall. How does the GI Bill factor in with FAFSA, and does it affect your EFC at all?
So no, the GI Bill does not affect your EFC at all. As a matter of fact, I mean, it's an amazing thing to have. So you still want to make sure that you file your FAFSA, because those are two different departments within college. So on one side, you have financial aid, which is where you will file your FAFSA and see what scholarships, what grants, and what loans you will get from the financial aid department. And then the GI Bill, that's actually going to be handled with the Veterans Affairs. So what you want to make sure is that you have your college picked out first. Once you decide on that college and you accept the award letter, then after you accept everything that they're going to give you, then that's when you want to reach out to your Veteran Affairs office at that school and let them know about the GI Bill. But the good thing is you may not even have to use it for undergrad. And that's what a lot of people don't know. They automatically think because they get the GI Bill that they have to use that, and they don't need to file the FAFSA. But by filing the FAFSA, and let's say that you get a full ride at a school, then you can take that GI Bill and actually use it for grad school. So just a nugget to kind of keep in mind.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Hall, for that. Mr. Kelly, what do you do if you're applying to more than 10 colleges? How do you list more than 10 colleges on the FAFSA form?
Very good question. And I do want to thank you for deflecting that question to Mr. Hall. He is the expert on all things military. What do you do if you want to apply to more than 10 schools? Well, I would say, obviously, you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket, but then your basket can get a little too full, all right? Sometimes your basket can get too full. But I suggest, and one thing that I tell my students, obviously, you have your top 3 schools that you want to apply to. You have your top 3 schools that you want to apply to. Those could be your REACH schools, and then you have your schools that you know, okay, I have a good academic profile. I'm definitely applying to these schools. I just want to see what they will offer me. But then you might have those schools that someone told you about that, hey, you need to apply here. I think you can apply here. You might get in. It's a school that grandma wants you to apply to, but you really don't want to apply to. So if you have 10 schools, yes, put them on the FAFSA, but there has to be some point that if you know that you're not going there, you can remove that school from your FAFSA form. And if you need to add another, I would say you need to be making these decisions in a timely fashion. That's why time management is very important, because you still want to adhere to the priority FAFSA deadline for that college. So even if it's not on your radar now and you think that you might want to add it, you need to add it in a timely fashion, and also take off a school that you're saying, okay, I visited, I don't like it, I'm not going to keep it on my FAFSA form. Right. So very good question.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And if you did, for whatever reason, stick with 15 schools, let's say, you would apply to the first 10, let that the FAFSA submit for that 1 to 3 days until it's actually processed. And then you would go back in, remove 5 schools from your FAFSA form, add the additional 5 schools that you haven't sent it to yet, and then resubmit it. But like Mr. Kelly
what he said. Yeah, what he said.
Yeah, but like Mr. Kelly said, that's a lot of schools. So go see your access advisor to get some help if you need that. Just reading through this question. It's a longer question. Either one of you probably could take this question. Is there such a thing as an income cap exist on the FAFSA where you may earn too much money to qualify for any assistance from the FAFSA form?
No, there is no such thing as an income cap. And I know sometimes I run into families who feel like they make too much to file for the FAFSA, but what you have to keep in mind as well is sometimes the merit-based scholarships are also attached to this as well. So that's why I'm always telling the students, even if you don't think that you qualify, make sure that you are still filing, because it may affect sometimes scholarships and also loans. I know we don't like to talk about loans too much, but sometimes we do need to have that option, and we can't have that option unless we file the FAFSA. But no, there is no income cap. Everyone's eligible. Well, not everyone, but if legal citizens are eligible to file, and there is no income cap.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Hall. And I know some families with really high incomes as well. They use the student loans, like you mentioned, as a good way to build credit for their student.
Yep.
Take those loans out, and then they can build credit for their student.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mr. Kelly, do both a parent and a student need to create an FSA ID?
Very good question. Yes, both a parent and a student need to create an FSA ID. Consider it like your social security number. It will follow you throughout the end of time. So it doesn't matter if a parent wants to go back to school or take some classes and they want to apply for financial aid, they will use their FSA ID to do that, but also they will use it to sign for their student, as their student will be a dependent up until the age of 24. So a parent will need to submit their FSA ID along with the student's FSA ID. Also, if you have multiple children in school, the parent will utilize the same FSA ID for themselves, and they will sign multiple children's FAFSA with their FSA ID. Each child would have to have their own FSA ID, and then the process continues. If your student then gets married and they have children, they will continue to use their FSA ID. Good question.
Perfect.
Great answer.
Yeah.
Mr. Hall, could you explain a little bit more about the priority filing deadlines for the FAFSA as opposed to the deadlines for college applications?
Sure. So, of course, there are a couple of deadlines to keep in mind. So the two that we're going to kind of talk about and explain are the FAFSA filing deadline and the application deadline. So you want to make sure for both that you are checking the colleges and seeing when those deadlines are. So if we are talking about college, what we're looking at are three different deadlines. Some may have what's called early decision, which is binding. Keep that in mind. Early action, which means that you'll get your decision earlier. And then you have regular decision. So for some schools, you actually have 3 different dates. There's also some schools that have rolling admissions where they pretty much accept all year round until the class is full. So those are on the application side for the colleges. But the colleges also have a separate side for financial aid, and those are the financial aid deadlines. The financial aid deadlines are super important to remember because I want y'all to know that colleges have a pot, right? So I like to look at it as a pot of money. And when this pot runs out or it starts to empty, then if you file after the deadline, what happens is you're kind of reaching for what's left. And that's what we don't want to happen. So at Access, that's why we really try to push all of our students to make sure that we are filing before the priority deadlines, because we want you to be able to get the money that's in the pot. But remember, if you miss those deadlines, then you are potentially missing out on a lot of money as well. So make sure that you know what the deadlines are and make sure that you file before. But if possible, it starts tomorrow. If possible, file tomorrow.
Perfect.
Very good.
So kind of like you're saying, it opens tomorrow, Paulus. Do you have to file it on October 1st?
No.
No, you do not.
It opens tomorrow, and if you can file it, get it out of the way, great. But no, you do not have to file it on October 1st. You just want to make sure, for instance, if a school's deadline says their priority filing deadline is December the 15th, make sure that you have it in before December the 15th. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't file after December the 15th, but it says priority deadline, meaning that priority is going to be given to the students who file by then, right? So just make sure you know what those deadlines are and you are filing by those deadlines. That's all.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Hall. Mr. Kelly, does it affect the student if the parent already has student loans?
No, very good question. Thank you for the question. No, the parent loan does not affect the student's loan. So I know that's the misconception. A lot of parents say, oh, you can't apply for FAFSA because I took out some money, I borrowed some money and didn't pay it back or whatever. Yeah. No, your information does not affect the student, only in signing for their FAFSA form. So your information needs to go in their FAFSA for them to be eligible for aid, but does not affect them in getting aid as far as you being default or anything on a loan. Very good question.
Perfect. This one could be for either of you guys. What do families need to do once they file the FAFSA if their income in 2021 is significantly lower than the taxes and the tax return from 2020 that they'll be using on their FAFSA?
Okay. So the way that this works is you're still going to file for this year using your 2020 taxes. However, the college that you choose to go to, that's when you're going to work again with your Access advisor and form what's called an appeal letter. So most colleges have a document that we can ask them for, and what that document does is it allows us to appeal. Now, when we appeal, just keep in mind that we're going to have to show proof. I know last year we had a few appeals and we had to show proof. So make sure that you keep those documents with you. but that's how that process works. Don't let it scare you into not filing, because there's always a way. Okay, so once you get that in, but also keep in mind too that it really only works for the college that you're actually going to. Okay, so the college that you're actually choosing is the one that you want to do the appeal with. Okay.
Yeah, very good. And just to piggyback off of that, a term that you might want to write down is you are seeking a professional judgment from the financial aid office. So you can get familiar with that term. If something like that happens where your income is significantly less than the previous year, you want to seek a professional judgment and see if something can be done to correct your award letter.
Perfect. Thank you, guys. This next question is about for a senior that might be unsure of still what colleges exactly they want to apply to. Can I list a college on the form even if I haven't applied yet? And what would happen if I never apply to that college?
Yeah. Yes, you can list again up to 10 schools, and Mr. Williams' method does stand true as far as you list those 10. If you decide that you aren't, that you need to add others, you can take the 5 of those off and add another 5. But even if you do not apply to that school, your information is in that virtual whatever system that college uses. It will only be pulled if you do apply though. So like your social security number is very important. Obviously your full name and your birth date. If they see that information come across their system, they will automatically link your FAFSA with your application. If you do not have an application on file, there will be nothing to link. So all the other schools that you apply to and included on your FAFSA, they will get your information, but the school that you did not apply to will not. And so that's why I suggest that you apply to the colleges, because you want to see what award letter or how much money a college is willing to offer you. Remember, if they're not on your FAFSA, you will not receive an award letter.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly.
Right.
Also, unfortunately, if you don't get admitted to that college, you won't see a financial aid award letter.
Correct.
Mr. Hall, could you talk about 529 plans and kind of where that goes on the FAFSA, what that is considered in terms of FAFSA?
Sure, and I actually want to turn that back over to Arthur, because the way that he explains it is unlike anything is better than anything that I can do. Please, Arthur.
Okay, sounds good.
All right. Well, just can you read? I heard Apollo. Can you read the question one more time for me?
Sure. This family was just curious. They have a 529 plan, and they were curious where that would go on the FAFSA and how does FAFSA interpret that?
Yeah, good question. There's something that's also something that you can look up in Google. How does the Virginia 529 affect my FAFSA form? If the parent is the owner, it does go on the FAFSA as an asset. If a grandparent is the owner, no, you do not have to put it on the FAFSA form. But again, remember, if the parent is the owner of the 529 savings plan, it is considered an investment, an asset, because if your student decides not to use it or does not go to school, you can pocket that, get that money back. So yes, as the owner, you do have to list it on the FAFSA. Your advisor can help you with that. And there's specific verbiage on the FAFSA form on certain lines that will assure that you need to put that information in.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Well said.
No problem.
Mr. Hall.
Yes.
This question is that they're looking at a 2-year college, community college, instead of a 4-year college right away. Do they accept financial aid and FAFSA?
Absolutely, absolutely. The beauty of starting out at a community college like Tidewater Community is that, of course, the pay is going to be less. It costs less to go there. And with some of our students, financial aid usually covers everything through Pell Grant, mostly, and maybe through a few loans, but normally Pell Grant pretty much covers most of the tuition there at Tidewater Community. So yes, financial aid can definitely be used for community colleges.
Thank you. Mr. Kelly, once you've submitted your FAFSA and it's in the system. Am I able to go back and make changes specifically at a college, or once I've submitted it, it's done?
Very good question. Yes, you can make changes to the FAFSA form, but there are certain steps that the federal government did provide, so you don't have to. And that was by using the IRS data retrieval tool. So all income information, if you file for your 2020, should be able to transfer over to the FAFSA. Now, obviously, if you did not do your taxes, you file for an extension or something, that would affect the data retrieval tool not working in that case. So you would have to manually input that information in. That could be a cause for having to go back and correct something. But obviously, if you created your FSA ID, all that information transfers over onto the FAFSA form. So all that information should be correct. The only time that you would typically need to correct something is if you submit the FAFSA and in 2 to 3 days when it comes back, if you do not see it say processed successfully, then that means something is wrong. And you're probably going to get some correspondence in the mail or through email. So you definitely want to double check after you submit your FAFSA form that it did process successfully. But yes, you can make corrections to the FAFSA. And I would advise you, do not make too many corrections, because a college can also make corrections to your FAFSA. Once a college makes that correction, you probably don't want to go in and change that, especially if it was in your favor.
Perfect. Thank you.
No problem.
A couple more along the same lines. Yes, you can absolutely, once, like Mr. Kelly said, submit it, you can absolutely go back in and add an additional college. Maybe a new college came on your radar. You can go in, add that school, and then resubmit your FAFSA form. Absolutely. Here's a good question. Does the FAFSA take into account multiple students from the same family in college at the same time?
Yes, it does, but remember, it's also going to be based off of income as well. So, for instance, let's say that parent A on their FAFSA is, let's start a number, $50,000, and let's say that you have 4 students in college at the same time. Yes, you have more of a need than, let's say, someone who has 2 students in college at the same time. So it does, but it's really based more off of household, the amount of people within the household, and how much income comes within that household.
Yep, exactly right. Thanks, Mr. Hall. Yeah, you'll probably notice a difference. It'll be a lower EFC, but maybe not as much as most parents would like, right?
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, here's a great question. So is there any fee associated for someone coming to an Access Advisor to help get the FAFSA filed?
Well, Mr. Kelly charges 50, but I am no, I'm just kidding. No, Access does an amazing job. They have made it so you have advisors in each of these schools to be able to help you free of charge. We are a great resource. So that's why we are out here tonight. We want y'all to know that we are here. Please come and see us so we can help you do this.
Yep, all of our services are completely free. So, a couple questions along this. I think we touched on a little bit, but just since there's more in the chat, we'll go over it again, Mr. Kelly. If a parent already has an FSA ID from a previous student in college, could they use that same one for a current senior?
Yes, great question. Yes, you can use the same one. Obviously, there might be some, you might have changed emails. You might not know what email you use. You might not know challenge questions. Your Access Advisor can help you through all that. If you cannot remember the challenge questions that you put, or the phone number that you used, or the email address that you used, your Access Advisor can help you locate that. Also by calling the federal government to have them give you a new username and password and allow you to get into your account but you do have to submit some verifying information if you go that route.
Right. Right.
Here's another FSAID question. They are tricky, those FSAIDs, a little bit.
They are.
Do you need to have one set up prior to submitting the FAFSA form?
In short, yes.
Yes, you do. That's correct. And again, Access Advisors, they can help you set up your FSAID and the usernames and passwords all at the same appointment. So you could set up the usernames and passwords, and then they can file your FAFSA form all in that same appointment. So that is correct. We covered that one about the differing incomes. This question is asking to maybe the new look of the FAFSA form, where it has 3 options when you log in. I'm a student, I'm a parent filing for a student, I'm a preparer helping. Can you explain which ones I would select as a parent and which one as my child, or how to go about that?
We're selecting student.
Yeah.
We're selecting student. We're getting down to the nitty gritty and submitting as a student. Just know that the parent and the student must have an FSA ID. So if a parent does log in with their FSA ID, they're actually logging in onto their FAFSA account. So we just make sure that for the student that is going to school, that we log into their account, and the parent will be adding their FSID at the end and during the data retrieval tool. But we want to make sure that we are on the student's account. I've had that in the past where parents have created an FSID for themselves. We get there and we're actually doing the parent's FAFSA. So to eliminate that, we want to make sure that we are filling the FAFSA out for the student.
Right.
Correct. Just reading through these, couple of them are just repeat questions, which is okay. We always want to make sure people getting the correct information they need.
Absolutely.
This question, she wrote a longer paragraph, which is fine. So yes, the setup, basically in theory, you would set up an FSAID for student and at least one of the parents. Doesn't have to necessarily be both, just at least one of the parents. You fill out the FAFSA form, list the colleges that you have applied to already or plan to apply to, and then you submit the FAFSA form.
Perfect.
All right, here's a good question, and I think it applies to a lot of families. If the parents are divorced, but the child lives with mom most of the time, who do we put on the FAFSA form? Which parent? Does it matter if dad claims that student on the tax form?
Very, very good question. In the business of access, we are not trying to cause division between families. So I would just say a general rule of thumb, any parent can claim them on their taxes. That is a decision that you make as a parent. According to the FAFSA, whoever the child lives with the most, so even if you do have joint custody, whoever the child lives with the most, that's the information that we're going to provide on the FAFSA. So at some point, you know, if a child is staying more in one home than the other. So we would use that information. Other general rules of thumbs, obviously, in some cases, are who makes, you know, the less of the income. But those are tricky questions that can be handled with your access advisor. So I definitely encourage you to make sure you set up an appointment with them, and they can walk you through that process and show you the actual verbiage for that.
Perfect, thank you. This one's kind of funny. I'm not very tech savvy and I can't get your QR code to work for me to contact my advisor. What's the best way to contact my access advisor?
The best way is going to be through email. Now, whatever school you're at, they also have an office there as well. So if you don't know who your Access Advisor is, you can go on our website, accesscollege.org. And there's also links there as well, which you'll be able to contact your Access Advisor. But if you get the name of the Access Advisor, you can always send them an email through that contact, or you can tomorrow when you get in to school, start asking around. If you go to guidance, 10 times out of 10, guidance is going to know who your Access Advisor is, and they'll be able to direct you there.
And for purposes of tonight, the accesscollege.org link has been shared in the chat.
But yeah, like Mr. Hall said, if you just call guidance and say, hey, I was interested in speaking with the Access Advisor, they'll transfer you over for sure. This one's been put in the chat a couple times, so I want to make sure I ask that question for this family. Does the FAFSA work for international schools?
Very good question. That is something specific, and we would need to look at the school to see if they accept that. But they typically accept it for study abroad. But if you are looking at an international school, remember this is a federal form, a USA form. So we just have to make sure that it coincides with a university that can accept FAFSA, just like any apprenticeship school or culinary cosmetology school, they accept the FAFSA. But international wise, through study abroad, yes, but something that you and your advisor can look up to see if that school accepts financial aid from the US.
Mr. Kelly, great answer, sir. All right, here's one, and either of you could probably take it. Will my Access Advisor help me choose colleges and help me talk about majors that are best suited for my career interests? Is that something that Access Advisors do?
Absolutely, 110%. You know, FAFSA is what we specialize in, but because we specialize in that, we have to also learn and study up on the trends, on colleges, on majors, making sure that we are well-rounded. So yes, when you come in there, you're coming in there for FAFSA, but we're also college advisors. Okay, so we will definitely be able to sit down with you, go through the college process, and help you along that path for sure.
Perfect. Yep, exactly. This last question that just came through, can my Access Advisor also help me file that CSS profile? I know we talked about that a little earlier, but.
Yes, they can.
So, yep, Access Advisors are able to help with FAFSA, and we can continue on with the CSS profile. That's definitely one of the next steps that they can help you with once they see what schools you're applying to and everything and like that. But again, keep in mind, not every college that you apply to is requiring that secondary financial aid form.
Right.
All right. Well, gentlemen, it looks like we've made it through the
Kyle,
chat questions. Yes, sir.
Mr. Williams, if you don't mind, I see one that I do want to answer, and it's pertaining to something that just came out with the military, and it's from a parent. It says, what if the parent is 100% disabled and got a loan forgiveness? Can the child still be allowed to apply, and which parent should apply? So something has happened where if you are 100% disabled on both sides, if you get Social Security, then you can apply for loan forgiveness for your loans. And if you are in the military, you can also apply to get your loans discharged if you are 100% disabled. So what happens is now after you apply and you've been accepted and your loans have been discharged, you can no longer take out any loans or sign on any loans unless you can prove that you're no longer 100% disabled, which means your benefits will also go away. So no, it does not affect the student. The student can still apply. That is not a problem at all. But when it comes to a parent loan, like a Parent Plus loan, let's say you want to do a Parent Plus loan, if you're the one who is 100% disabled, you wouldn't be able to, but your spouse or the other parent would still be able to co-sign for that.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Hall, for
Great
getting that one.
information.
That's definitely an important one. Okay. Well, it looks like we made it through, like I said, the majority of questions. Thank you, Mr. Kelly and Mr. Hall. You guys did a great job tonight answering all those. And thank you to everyone that joined us tonight to get this information. It is so, so important for your students so that they are making great decisions this fall on when to file, how to file. Keep in mind that your Access advisors are here to help you every step of the way. So please give us a call. We'd love to help you in any way. File the FAFSA form, look it over for you, what have you. But that's what we're here to do is to help the community and all the high schools that we serve.
Absolutely.
So thank you for coming out tonight. We're going to end it here. Everyone be safe and have a great evening. And we will work with you and talk to you soon.
All right, have a great.
Bye, guys.